Shall we start?
Should we?
Yes.
Okay. So, for those of you who don't know me and unfortunately haven't met yet, my name is Desiree. I'm 24 years old, and I am from Tampa, Florida. I'm just going to talk about my work today for this presentation, and I'm going to talk about the work that I applied when I got here, the work I'm producing now, some influential philosophers and artists, and basically what I've been up to and where I predict I'll be going. So this is one of the works that I applied with in the program. This is called Affliction. And a lot of my work when I produce is sort of like an assembly of physical and digital modes of production. So these are videos, little flip books from video stills that were created in this sort of physical format to sort of make it so the viewer had to activate this footage rather than being sort of a passive bystander in it. And then as well as there was a video on top of the pedestal recently of political footage. Here's another shot of it. Basically, this was sort of my examination of all the events that were going on with the war and sort of the media footage being released and some of the parallels between them. Here's some details of the thaumatropes as well as the books. The thaumatropes that were activated sort of worked with these words that seemingly were polar opposites, but they were inevitably linked. So you can't examine the past without looking to the future, and can't really protect without being willing to fight to defend your space. And so basically the flip books worked with media footage, and then this was sort of like a linguistic verbal exploration. And this is a different work that was collaborative, and it's basically called How We Walk in Tampa. And so we sort of had this whole setup where we had this table of tags of hundreds of different walking types. So we had everything from protest march to walking the line to gay pride parade and everything in between. And so viewers were invited to come up to this table, select one of these tags, and then demonstrate it for everyone watching. And we would tag them, and they would get to keep their demonstration tag as a sort of souvenir. We sort of all had this faux scientist performative aspect, and we were trying to categorize and learn as much as we could and try to classify walking, and then also examine sort of power structures and social implications that types of walking imply. I was one of the people that actually would take notes and like sort of archive these things and do the descriptors of the live performances. Other people would be the people to help you make your selection. We had a videographer. There was also a girl at one point who would be typing like mad these cards that I would actually be handwriting out. And the piece would sort of invade the entire space of its deployment, because everybody at the end of the night would have these different walking tags. It provoked a discourse on exactly what we were doing and how it was sort of fun and interactive, but it was also critical. The last pictures were at the Contemporary Art Museum, by the way. These ones are at the Museum of Art in Tampa. And basically the same thing. We're engaging people to come up to the table to perform for us, and with us, basically, because we were performing ourselves. We had this walking kit that we sort of developed throughout the project that had like soil samples, postcards that were really old, dirty socks, crazy rusty measuring equipment, all this really just whimsical, interesting stuff that we just thought would get people to come over and be like, what is that? And then this one was the Tampa Sundome, but it was the Going Green event, and so we continued the work there. So this next piece is called Project Sleepwalk Talk, and it has a web presence as well as a physical installation presence, which is where these photographs will sort of take you. Basically, it was talking about psychogeography, and it was on a more personal level that was participant-based as well. And so the parameters for it were kind of outrageous, and I thought, nobody will want to do this. Nobody's going to let me wake them up at 4 a.m. Let me follow them with a night vision video camera and sort of document where they walk and what they say in a sort of stream of conscious prompt. But actually, a lot of people did. And this is the sort of installation that materialized out of it. I had a laptop that would show the website, and it had a streaming live audio component, so people, if they weren't in Tampa, Florida, where I could physically follow them, they could call on their cell phones and do their self-guided tours through their neighborhood. And then these are the tangible sort of audio documents from the people that I recorded, and then I had a projection grid that sort of resembled a surveillance grid of 12 of the participants. And it was flanked by mirrors, so it was just this play on how, even though it's 12 participants, the way the mirrors reflected it, it went out infinitely. It suggested something more than itself. Each participant that is on the screen had a file corresponding with it, and these little LED flashlights that were on pulley strings because the installation was actually very dark with the projection. And so everyone had a file, they had their testimony / transcript, they had aerial maps of where they walked, they had photographs, video stills, all kinds of corresponding data. And so these walking projects basically, I'm still interested in now that I'm here in Santa Barbara. And now that I'm here in California, there's actually, I've been really thankful and really excited about Dick Hebdage's Deserting the Map and Mapping the Desert class. And so walking in this new terrain, because, you know, the desert, wow, from Florida, what? I was really wanting to continue this and see where it would take me. And so that's launched an entire series of works called Scrap Matters, Reading the Desert, where while I was walking through the terrain of the Mojave Desert, what was most interesting to me was the found objects that were actually more familiar in this sort of alien landscape. So as I was walking, I would notice these papers sort of wedged into the roots of the brush and things. And so I started to collect these, and it led to an archiving process. And so this is one of the scans that I decided to archive in encasing glass and sort of push this suspension that the desert was sort of deteriorating these works. And so I kind of figured if I translate them into a digital format and archive them, maybe I can sort of remake accessible these papers and then also suspend their further deterioration. So these are some of those works. I really liked how some of them referenced like the Dead Sea Scrolls and religious works and archaic texts. And then some of them were really personal. And some of them even suggested date marking, which I was really interested in. This was from 1996. And this was another one that I really liked. I just thought visually it was super beautiful. And really just strange how this organic stain happened with all these Doppler striations that when I was arranging how my works would be placed in the show, I thought it segued really well visually with the viral golf course pedestal piece, which I'll talk about soon. So these are also on display around the Palm Desert Graduate Center at UCR. So I'm kind of excited that they actually made their way sort of back to their home a little bit, but they're going to be on the web soon too, which will make them more accessible. So, and going to other works, I'm really interested in water politics and sort of this conservation and sustainability effort with water. And this was again inspired by Dick Hebdage's class because I learned that the Palm Desert area in California is actually the most golf course congested area in California, and coming from Tampa, coming from Florida, Florida is actually the #1 golf course congested state in the US, and then California is #2. So I thought there was this really interesting, disturbing way, the bracketing of the country by the #1 and 2 golf course congested states. So I decided to explore them in two possibilities. This one was as a stark data set that sort of lists the address, the yards, the pars, the names, the phone numbers of all 1,137 golf courses. And I decided that font size 7, encased in glass, all of this is like really sort of inaccessible, this insurmountable amount of data. And so I wanted to reinforce that with the stanchions as well, to sort of, even though I find this list completely disturbing, no matter how activists I try to get, no matter how hard I fight, it's kind of like they're not going anywhere. There's nothing you can really do. They're part of California's tourism industry, essentially protected and preserved. So this display was sort of alluding to that. Another picture of it. And I titled this one Stay the Course. And this is the visualization, basically, of that data set. This is a pedestal that used 1,000 vials to sort of highlight the geospatial positioning of those 1,000 golf courses. And I was really trying to play with aesthetics here and try to